In a case penned by the bar chair, Justice Carolan, he laid down the guidelines for the third doctor referral. So this mechanism is used whenever there is a contrary finding between that of the company physician and the seafarer's own choice of doctor. So just a brief background of the case, Bunayog was a chief cook and he was found to have pneumonia. The company physician declared him fit to work after treatment and evaluation. And then Bunayog went to another doctor who declared him unfit for sea duty. Now, he went to his employer asking for another medical evaluation, but the employer refused to process his request. Now, uh, Justice Kerlan took time to consolidate all the guidelines that was that were provided for in different cases, and he came up with eight guidelines. So the first one, once a seafarer receives a contrary finding, he must send a written request to his employer. What should it contain? To ask for a mutually agreed third doctor who will evaluate again his medical condition. Now, the written request must be accompanied with a medical report of the seafarer's doctor. So, hindi pwede written request lang. The medical report must also be attached. Otherwise, the request is considered invalid as if none has been requested. So, two scenarios. If there was no request on the part of the seafarer, even having contrary finding from his doctor, or if the request was invalid, meaning there is no attached medical report, the employer may ignore or refuse it without violating the POEA SEC. Now, should a complaint filed and the parties fail to secure a third doctor after the labor arbiter's directive, the company physician's findings are final and binding unless clearly biased. So, meaning hindi automatic na final and binding yung kay company physician. If it is biased, then what the tribunal should do is to weigh the inherent merit. So, evaluate din yung laman ng two conflicting medical reports. Now, the other scenario is when there's a valid request. So, the employer is required to send a written reply within 10 days that confirming that the procedure will be done and that there will be a third doctor. So, after a positive response, the parties have 15 days to secure the third doctor and 30 days for the third doctor to submit the assessment, which is then final and binding. So, wala nang qualifying yan because there is a presumption that the third doctor is not biased because both of the parties agreed to that doctor. So, wala na yung qualifying na kung bias pa or not. It is final and binding. Now, fifth, if the employer ignores the request, refuses to initiate referral, or assents beyond the 10 days, the employer violates the POEA SEC and the seafarer may now file a complaint with the labor arbiter. Now, of course, in the labor arbiter, dadaan mo na yan sa NCMB. there's a mandatory conference, and then they will be given a chance to seek again a third doctor within 15 days again. And then that doctor will submit his assessment within 30 days. So, naka-mirror lang yung period niya sa guideline number 4. So, 15 days to secure the third doctor. The doctor will submit his assessment within 30 days. Seventh, if no third doctor is secured because of the employer's refusal or the party's failure to agree, the tribunals make the seafarer's physician's findings conclusive between the parties, unless clearly biased. Then, the inherent merits and totality of evidence are then considered. Now, this shows that when there is fault on the part of the employer will be punished, meaning the seafarer's physician findings will now be conclusive between them. Of course, unless clearly biased. Then the tribunals will now weigh the inherent merits and the totality of evidence. Now, on the other hand, if the failure to refer was due to the seafarer's own fault, siya naman ang punished. Then the company physician's findings are conclusive between the parties, of course, unless clearly biased. Then the inherent merits and totality of evidence are then considered. If despite the employer's earlier failure to respond, the parties do secure a third doctor at a conference, that the doctor's findings are final and binding, and the earlier refusal becomes immaterial. So now this operates as a curative provision na oo, hindi nga nag-respond si employer, tapos walang naging third doctor na agreed between the parties. But nevertheless, they were able to secure a third doctor during the conference. Then that third doctor's findings are final and binding. And curative siya kasi nakuha naman yung the goal is to be able to secure third doctor findings. And now it becomes final and binding.